My name is Eleanor Voss. I was 34 years old, and the last thing I ever did in this world was check into a hotel room that no one has entered since. They sealed my door. They disconnected my phone line. They told the staff never to speak about what they found inside. 50 years later, that room is still locked, and nobody ever asked me what happened. Until now. I remember the exact sound my suitcase made when I set it down that night. The carpet was gold. The lamp was tilted. And something in that room felt like it had been waiting specifically for me. What they found inside changed that hotel forever. What they didn't find is what should have changed everything else. I have names. I have dates. I have something they never knew I kept. Something small, something hidden, something that tells the whole truth. Before I tell you what actually happened, if you're new here, please like this video and subscribe. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Now, let me take you back to the night it all started. You've walked past rooms like mine. You just never stopped to wonder what was inside. It was November, 1974. The kind of cold that doesn't just touch your skin, it finds something deeper. I pulled my coat tighter and walked through the lobby of the Hargrove Hotel like I had somewhere important to be. Because I did. The man at the front desk didn't look up when I signed my name. Room 214. Third floor. End of the hall. I remember the key was heavier than it should have been. Nobody knew I was there. That was the point. I hadn't told my sister. I hadn't told the man who thought he knew everything about me. I had one bag, $40, and something folded inside my coat pocket that I wasn't ready to show anyone yet. The elevator groaned on the way up. A housekeeper passed me in the hallway without making eye contact. And when I finally pushed open the door to room 214, I stood there for a moment just breathing. Something about that room felt final. I didn't know yet how right that feeling was. You have to understand what 1974 meant for a woman like me. There were no cell phones. No cameras in every corner. If you disappeared, you disappeared. And if someone powerful enough wanted to make sure no one came looking, they could do that too. I had a job at a legal firm in Cincinnati. Junior filing clerk. 7 years in the same building, and still they handed coffee orders to me before case files. I knew things about that firm that none of those men wanted written down anywhere. That was the problem. 3 weeks before I checked into the Hargrove, I found something in a folder I wasn't supposed to touch. Names. Payments. A transaction dated back to 1971 that connected two people who publicly despised each other. I didn't understand all of it immediately, but I understood enough to know my hands were shaking when I closed that folder. I told one person. Just one. That was my first mistake. Within a week, my apartment lock had been changed without notice. My supervisor stopped making eye contact, and a man I didn't recognize sat outside my building 2 mornings in a row. So I packed one bag, and I found a hotel where nobody knew my name. Let me tell you who I was before that room changed everything. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Middle child. Father worked the railroads. Mother cleaned houses on the east side of town. We weren't poor enough to complain and never rich enough to relax. I learned early that women like me didn't get handed anything. We borrowed space and returned it quietly. I was sharp. Everyone said so. Teachers. Neighbors. The pastor at our church who told my mother I should go to college, then looked surprised when I actually did. I put myself through 2 years of night school while working a diner shift that started at 5 in the morning. I wasn't chasing greatness. I was chasing stability. There's a difference. And most people who've never been without it don't understand that. By 1974, I had a small apartment, a savings account with $400 in it, and a reputation at that firm for being invisible enough to trust around sensitive documents. That invisibility, they thought it protected them. It didn't. Because invisible women watch everything. We hear the conversations that stop when important people enter rooms. We see what gets left behind on desks at 6 p.m. when everyone assumes we've already gone home. I hadn't gone home. I was still there. Reading. I arrived at the Hargrove at 8:47 in the evening. I remember the time because I checked my watch twice in the taxi. Old habit. My mother always said a woman traveling alone should know exactly what time it is. Because if something goes wrong, the first thing anyone asks is when. The lobby was quiet. A television behind the front desk was playing the news with the volume low. 2 men sat in armchairs near the entrance. One was reading. One was not. I kept my eyes forward. The clerk who checked me in had a name tag that said Paul. He asked for ID. I gave it. He asked how many nights. I said I wasn't sure yet. He paused at that, just briefly, then handed me the key without another word. I paid in cash. I took the stairs instead of the elevator this time. Force of habit or instinct. Even now I'm not entirely sure which one it was. Room 214 was exactly as I'd left it an hour before. Untouched. Still, the tilted lamp threw a long shadow across the far wall. I locked the door behind me, slid the chain across, set my bag on the chair, not the bed. Then I reached into my coat pocket, and I placed the folded document on the table in front of me. There it was. Everything. Right there under that tilted yellow light. I sat at that table for 2 hours before I moved again. The document in front of me had 7 pages. I had read them so many times by then that I could recite the numbers from memory. But sitting there in room 214, under that tilted lamp, something new caught my eye. Something I had missed every single time before. A name in the margin. Written in pencil. Light enough that you'd skip over it unless you were looking at exactly the right angle in exactly the right light. I won't tell you whose name it was yet, but I will tell you this. It was someone whose photograph I had seen in a newspaper that same week. Someone who was being publicly celebrated. Someone who shook hands with senators. My stomach dropped. I stood up, walked to the window. The street below was empty except for a car idling across the road. No driver visible. Just running lights and exhaust rising in the cold November air. I stepped back from the window. I took the document and separated one page from the rest. Folded it differently, smaller, and hid it in a place that wasn't my coat pocket this time. Then I did something that probably saved that page from disappearing forever. I picked up the hotel room phone, and I made a call that only one other person in the world knew to expect. The call lasted 4 minutes. I know because the hotel phone log recorded it. I only found that out much later, from someone who shouldn't have been able to access those records but did anyway. The person I called didn't speak much. They listened. I gave them 3 pieces of information. A name, a number, and a location where something could be found if I stopped being reachable. Then I hung up. I sat back down at the table, drank the glass of water that had been sitting there since I arrived, looked at the remaining 6 pages still spread in front of me, and then someone knocked on my door. Not the soft knock of housekeeping. Not the polite double tap of a hotel employee. This was 3 knocks. Slow, deliberate. The kind that doesn't ask, it announces. I didn't move. They knocked again. I looked at the chain across the door. Still engaged. I looked at the window. 3rd floor. No ledge worth trusting. I looked at the pages on the table. I had maybe 30 seconds to make a decision that I had not prepared for, because I genuinely did not believe they would find me this fast. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about the one person I had trusted too. The knock came a 3rd time, and then it stopped. And that silence was somehow worse than everything that came before it. I don't remember everything that happened after that silence. That's not me being evasive. That's what fear does to memory. It takes the edges and burns them clean off. What I do remember is morning light, coming through a gap in the curtains I hadn't opened, and the sound of voices in the hallway. Low, urgent, more than 2 people. I remember the door being open. I don't remember opening it. The housekeeper who found me was named Gloria. I know that because she was the only one who ever spoke about that night publicly. Once in 1987, to a local reporter who buried the story on page 11 before his editor pulled it entirely. Gloria said the room looked untouched. Bed unslept in. Table cleared. No luggage. No coat. But the chain was still engaged from the inside. That's the part nobody could explain. That's the part that made the general manager pick up his phone and call someone above him. And that person called someone above them. And somewhere at the top of that chain a decision was made. Don't rent the room. Don't clean it. Don't talk about it. Room 214 was removed from the hotel inventory that same afternoon. No guests. No record. No explanation given to staff below management level. Just a door. And a silence that has lasted 50 years. Hotels are very good at pretending. The Hargrove didn't skip a beat. Checkout time stayed the same. The restaurant on the ground floor kept serving breakfast at 7. New guests arrived. Old guests left. The elevator still groaned on the way up. And on the 3rd floor, room 214 sat behind its door like a held breath. Staff learned quickly not to ask. A bellboy named Marcus asked once, his first week, why that room was always skipped on the cleaning rotation. His supervisor looked at him for a long moment and said, "That room isn't on your rotation." Marcus left the job inside 3 months. He told his wife it wasn't the work that bothered him. It was the feeling on that hallway. Guests in room 212 complained about sounds. Not dramatic sounds. No screaming, no crashes. Just the occasional knock. 3 slow beats against the shared wall. Enough to wake someone at 2 a.m. Enough to make them call the front desk and ask if someone was next door. The answer was always the same. That room is unoccupied. By 1979, management had quietly installed a second lock on the outside of the door. Not a standard hotel lock. A deadbolt. The kind you'd put on a storage unit. Or a room you genuinely never intended to open again. Nobody announced it. It just appeared one morning. The way things do when powerful people want something to stop being a question. The first person who came looking for me wasn't a detective. She was a graduate student. 1981. Writing her thesis on women who disappeared from public record between 1970 and 1975. She found my name in a Cincinnati employment file that hadn't been properly sealed. Junior filing clerk. 7 years. Termination listed as voluntary resignation. I never resigned. She wrote 3 letters to the Hargrove requesting guest records from November 1974. The first 2 went unanswered. The third came back with a single typed line. Records from that period are unavailable. She noted in her thesis that the hotel was the only institution across 40 contacts that responded that way. Every other hotel, every other record office, gave something. The Hargrove gave a locked sentence. Her thesis was never published. She told a colleague it was pulled during review. She didn't say by whom. Then came a journalist. 1993. Chicago-based. He'd picked up Gloria's 1987 quote secondhand and traced it back to the source. He found Gloria living in Kentucky by then. Retired. She agreed to one conversation. She told him about the chain lock. About the cleared table. About the way the room smelled, not of anything wrong. Just of cold air. Like a window had been open all night in November. Except the window was shut. And locked from the inside. The journalist filed his story. It was reassigned to a different editor. Then shelved. He left that publication 8 months later. Some doors, the more people push, the tighter they seal. Everyone who looked at my story eventually landed on a theory. None of them are entirely wrong. That's what makes this harder than a simple answer would be. The first theory, the one management quietly encouraged without ever stating directly, was that I was unstable. A woman alone. Traveling without explanation. Paying cash. No forwarding address. The implication was neat and familiar and required no further investigation. Troubled women in 1974 were very easy to file away. That theory has one problem. Unstable women don't leave rooms with chains locked from the inside and every surface wiped clean. The second theory came from the cold case community in the early 2000s. Online forums. Amateur investigators with spreadsheets and too much coffee. They connected my employment at the legal firm to a federal inquiry that quietly opened in 1976 and just as quietly closed in 1978. No charges filed. No findings published. The forum thread that laid out the full connection was deleted within 72 hours of going live. Someone was still watching. The third theory is the one nobody says out loud in official conversations but everyone thinks first. That I didn't leave that room at all. That what Gloria found that morning was not an empty room. That what was removed from room 214 before she was allowed inside took about 20 minutes and 2 men with a service elevator. I'll let you sit with that one. Because the truth, the actual truth, is somehow both simpler and worse than any theory anyone has built. And I'm almost ready to tell you. The Hargrove Hotel was sold in 1999. The new ownership group was a property company based out of Atlanta. They did a full renovation. New carpets. New fixtures. Rebranded the restaurant. Updated every room on every floor. Every room except one. The purchasing contract, which a property lawyer leaked anonymously to a real estate blog in 2019, contained a single unusual clause buried in Section 9. The clause stated that room 214 on the 3rd floor was to remain unoccupied and unmodified for the duration of ownership. No explanation given. No end date specified. The Atlanta group signed it anyway. Nobody asks why when the price is right. I've thought about that room often. Whether the tilted lamp is still there. Whether that table still sits in the same position under the same yellow light. Whether the air inside has changed after 50 years of stillness. Or whether it holds everything exactly as I left it. There are people who have tried to get inside. Urban explorers. Journalists with better lawyers than the ones before. A documentary crew in 2021, who got as far as the 3rd floor hallway before hotel security escorted them out without a single word of explanation. One of them managed to photograph through the gap at the bottom of the door. Just darkness. And the edge of something on the floor. Small. Folded. Like a piece of paper that had been there a very long time. I know exactly what that paper says. Put it there. Here is what I need you to understand. I am telling you this story because nobody else will. Not accurately. Not completely. The people who buried it had resources and time, and the particular confidence of those who have never once been held accountable for anything. But they made one mistake. They assumed that silence is permanent. That if you lock a door long enough, what's behind it stops mattering. They didn't account for 50 years of compounding curiosity. They didn't account for the graduate student, the journalist, the forum thread that lived for 72 hours, but was screenshot by 11 different people before it disappeared. They didn't account for a documentary crew with a camera small enough to slide beneath the door. And they didn't account for this. For you, sitting wherever you are right now, listening to a woman they assumed would never be heard. That folded paper on the floor of room 214 has one name on it. One date. One transaction that connects a celebrated man to something that would have ended careers and opened federal cases, and rewritten a very comfortable version of history. It is still there. The room is still sealed. And the people connected to that name, some of them are still alive. I have told you everything I can tell you from here. The rest requires someone willing to walk down a third-floor hallway, to knock on a door that hasn't been answered in 50 years, and to be brave enough to not look away from whatever is on the other side. The question was never what happened to me. The question is, now that you know what happens next. If this story stayed with you, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what do you think is on that paper? The answer might be closer than you think.